Welcome to a very special Christmas episode of the Apocalypse. The end is nigh. Never before has that been true. You are in a different time now. One that has not been seen since the beginning of time. There are two paths, only two, and all must choose. There can be no indifference anymore. I'm sorry. And Merry Christmas, by the way. So good to see you again. Path 1. God, Jesus Christ, righteousness, goodness, decency, the law. Path 2. The imp, the Antichrist, the apocalypse, Armageddon, evil, plague, the lake. Choose now. Congratulations, you have chosen the apocalypse. And since you have unwisely chosen the apocalypse, you are in urgent need of a guide. Unfortunately for me, I happen to be that guide, your humble guide, Nicholas. So good to see you a bloody gain. Son, pull up your covers, grab some cookies and warm milk. For Daddy Death is going to tell you a Christmas story. Where do I begin? In the beginning, of course. In the beginning, there was one who is yet three, who is yet one. He first created various creatures, including angels, multitudes of angels. He also created a thing called the imp, who's destined for the lake from the beginning of time. From the beginning of time, his destiny just calling, inevitable calling. Yet he fights nonetheless. But back to the story. The imp was not quite an angel, but something a bit different. As I said, the one God, who is three and yet one, created many different creatures, not just angels. The imp accused his brethren. The imp sowed discord. The imp was jealous, angry that he had to be under this one God, who is three yet one. The imp was also angry that God was going to create a thing called a human being, and that the angels and other creatures might be called to serve those human beings. though greater in strength and wisdom and life, immortal they are. The imp saw himself as greatest, as God. He wanted to be God, but there is already a God. There can be only one Son. But the imp would have none of that. So the imp led a rebellion against the one God who is three yet one. And eventually, in the story, is cast down from heaven with 1/3 of the angels in tow. 1/3 of the stars fall from heaven to earth. When that happens, they know their time is short. So the imp was not alone in his rebellion. Why the angels would follow another creature who wanted himself held up as God, I have no idea, but that is what they did. When God created man, man was imperfect. Man's imperfection and woman's caused them to follow the devil and not follow their God. So they were cast out of paradise, forced to work, women forced to bear children in pain. Forced to suffer illness and death and imperfection in the new 3D realm they were imprisoned in, shunned from paradise. Because humans were imperfect, God the Father knew they would need a savior, someone to cleanse them of their imperfection and sins. The imp, who also knows much of the future, along with his many angels, now demons, I guess you would call them, came down to earth in an attempt to further ruin God's creation, make it a creation not of God, and also attempt to stop the coming of the Christ, the Redeemer. The imp knew the Jewish people of this planet were God's chosen. And again, son, that never means that the Jewish people are better than any other kind of people. It means that God the Father chose them to bring the line of Christ, chose them to hold up as an example of both good and especially bad. For son, when you read the good book and learn of the old prophets, what you truly learn of is their fallibility, their imperfection, their disobedience of God. They all suffered dire consequences as a result of their disobedience and imperfection and fallibility. So although the ancient Jewish prophets were great in their way and not great as well, there needed to be a perfect one, a sinless one. Probably why God the Father made humans sacrifice animals and sacrifice their best son. For God knew he would be sending his best sacrifice, best of us all, by light years, the perfect one, the blemishless one, the Christ himself, part God himself. As I said, they are one, yet three, yet one. Never forget that, son. So the imp and his angel minions, also known as demons, also knew of the Christ and the lineage the Christ would come from. So the imp and his minions made sure to corrupt the Jewish genetic line as much as possible, and the human genetic line, through taking form here in some manner and having sexual relations with mortal women. Very simple, very straightforward. A direct war with God the Father, a direct attempt to utterly ruin his creation. That's why the flood was necessary, son. There was not. But what God did not create, except for very few. That is the explanation given, son. So again, the imp and his angels attempted at every turn to make sure that the entire genetic line, especially of the Jewish people, God's chosen people, was corrupt. Therefore, when Christ's birth took place, well, it would be through a, what shall we call them, Nephilim, if you will. Something that was not created by God, was created in direct rebellion against God. A ruination of his creation, if you will. The imp failed in his mission. Somehow, through pure Jewish ancestry, the Christ was born. Now you would think the devil would have made sure that Christ lived a nice, long, happy, rich life, and that nothing bad ever came his way. For his mission was to come and die for us, the imperfect, the unworthy, the sinful. You would think the devil would have known this and made sure the Christ was not sacrificed in such a way, but died of old age, fat and happy. But the devil's ignorance and hatred won the day. Not to mention the Christ was the greatest rebel of all. He took on the law, he took on the religious authority of the day, which had real authority, not like today. He took on the establishments that made him an enemy real quick, and he moved up on the list real fast. He was also gathering a following, performing miracles, giving sermons, healing the sick, feeding the poor, the hungry. He was gaining popularity. He was tearing down actively, presently, the paradigm. Anyone who does this is eliminated from the earth. Martin Luther King is a great example. JFK in his way, another example. Gandhi, another example. If you are that much of a threat to the paradigm, which is the imp, that's all your paradigm is, son, unfortunately. You die. That is the story of the paradigm breaker, if you will. Martin Luther King, Gandhi, JFK, etc. William Wallace in his way, although not a peaceful movement. But did he have much choice? No. Not with the English. Certainly not. So Christ, just like Gandhi, just like Martin Luther King, was a paradigm breaker, was the greatest threat this worthless, broken, imperfect realm ever saw. A piece of God himself in the flesh, who the laws of physics could not contain, according to the story, according to what I'm seeing now, son, which is why I'm telling you the story. Because, son, honestly, the Epstein revelations are so disgusting, I cannot even talk about them. So I figured I'd go this route instead. So Christ, the greatest threat to the established order, which is the imp always in this realm. It was never anything else, son. Ever. Any threat that great to the imp and his paradigm, which is your reality, dies. It is that simple. There are a million examples throughout history. That is why they die. The anger of the imp, the anger of this world against them, born of the devil. That is why they die. The anger cannot be contained. Evil must act. It cannot help itself. That is why they die. So the Christ, the greatest threat to the paradigm that ever was or will be, just like the rest, was beaten and murdered by the world in its entirety, by the imp, by his minions. Son, there was a Roman general who even asked the crowd, "I'm feeling good today. I want to let one of these men go. Who would you like to see go free, world? Jesus or the thief?" Son, the world chose the thief. And now that we're at the end, son, in this present time, Once again, the world chose the thief, chose the imp, directly, especially this time. So the world had to, and the imp and his minions had to dispose of the Christ. He was too much of a threat. So the Christ completed what he was sent here to do. He completed his mission, son. Died as the ultimate, perfect, best sacrifice for mankind. The only way for any man, son, to see the gates of heaven, to live forever. That is what you owe the Christ. Never forget that. For we all do forget, don't we? Including myself, son. I am no better. In that moment, when the Christ completed his mission, the devil was defeated, death was defeated. The devil knew his fate was certain, even though it took place thousands of years ago, son. But, son, the devil is a small child. He fights on, even though he knows the cause is lost. It was lost from the beginning, son. Many years pass. Eons. Thousands of years. And we come to today. A day where, in the good book, son, Jesus Christ gives a revelation to a man named John. In that dream, a man called the Antichrist is prophesied over 1,000 years ago. You are in that time now, son. Again, which is why I'm telling you the story. Some of you may never hear this. For there is not much time, and it takes years to understand this story, son. And to be able to tell it effectively, properly. The Antichrist throughout the Old Testament and the New is given many criteria. And son, the current occupant of the White House fits it all, both old and new, to the letter, except for what has not come to pass yet. But it will. What I've seen already come to pass, son, tells me the rest will as well. Unfortunately, and I guess fortunately at the very end. This Antichrist, given the name the Antichrist, for he is the direct opposite of Christ. Christ performed miracles and preached love and forgiveness, not execution, not an eye for an eye. Christ is the very love between man and woman, mother and child. The Antichrist is everything abominable. Not one atom of decency. Son, do you hear me? That is what is described. This Antichrist will have 42 months of power, speaking abominations and blasphemies every single day, all day, with naught but theft, murder, subjugation, and your worship of him on his mind. Nothing else, ever. What is also told about the Antichrist and this last moment that we have is that he will separate us all, and many will be lost along with the Antichrist. Many you see walking to and fro before you will be lost. And that's inevitable. I wish it were not. I wish we were not here at all in this last moment, under the thumb of the imp and the Antichrist. For again, what is described in the story that John so goodly relayed to us is the ultimate evil, is death upon death upon death, given the full authority of the devil, untouchable, who can make war with the beast. That is what we are talking about. A protected individual who will have his 42-month reign, no matter what. This Antichrist subjugates the entire world eventually, creates an entire new system where you must take a mark, pledge loyalty, maybe more than that. If you do not do this, you cannot participate in society. That will separate those who are of God and those who are not. It is a deadly serious moment, and it is coming. For John relays to us that those who take the mark are unforgivable. There is no redemption. If you take the mark, you will follow the Antichrist to the lake. You will experience all the plagues described that come against those who take the mark, who are minions or who are part of the cause of the Antichrist. In other words, son, there are no trade backs. There is no changing one's mind. There is no, I'm sorry, God. And Jesus, could you bear this cross for me? No. That will be your last act as a redeemable individual if you take the mark. The currency is already bought. The number is there. Just what form will the mark and the image take? For that is another part of the story. The image, never before in history, son. Has there been a technology or a way to send a being out to speak your gospel and be omnipresent? To be your living image? Never before has that been possible before AI. An image will be made to the beast who has the wound of the sword yet lived. It will be demanded that you worship the beast and that image. It will be demanded that you take the mark. That is where we're going, son. And all the indicators point to that being true. Unfortunately, I don't want them to, son. I'm not trying to scare you. Those aren't the ones I'm trying to, or excuse me, son, you're not the one I'm trying to scare. So a new currency, a mark upon our bodies in some fashion, right hand, forehead, perhaps a wearable of some sort. In the story, it also talks of great warmongering going on by the Antichrist. It talks of the imp, the devil himself, knowing he has but a short time before it's time to take a swim in the lake. So his anger is double quick. The Antichrist's viciousness, cruelty, double quick. Born of his father, the devil. The devil knowing he has but a short time So, son, what we're heading for is subjugation of the entire earth via the Reich and AI and the machine gun. Those who do not go along are pointed out of God, are revealed of God, and most likely dealt with. Unfortunately, son, many people speak and have spoken of a rapture. But a rapture cannot be. Why, son? Why is it not in the story? Although so many of the modern Christian church believe it, they need it to be in the story. Their psyches cannot handle it otherwise. I believe in God, they say, but I don't believe in God. I'm not willing to go that far. And yet Christ and the apostles were. That's why we are so much lesser than they. For son, it talks of in Revelation, the story I'm telling you, those beheaded for being the witnesses of God by the Antichrist. In other words, son, if all the Christians were taken up, then who would the Antichrist persecute? For it speaks in the story of the Antichrist persecution in the end times of Christians. It speaks in heaven of a multitude crying out to God, "When will we see justice, Lord? It has been so long." And God the Father tells them, "Not until your numbers are full," to those beheaded for the word of God by the Antichrist. So, son, I'm very sorry. I know many need to believe it, for it is very frightening, scary to think about facing what we may face. I understand. And we're especially not used to such things in America. We better get used to them. So, son, the mark, the image, world domination and subjugation, just like the old Reich. But this time, this is the true Antichrist with the full blessing, the actual story. So many said was nigh over 1,000 years. That's what's different about now. What is also different about now, son, in our Christmas story, is this Antichrist has a weapon that none have had before, called nuclear weapons. And a military almost as vicious and terrible as those nuclear weapons, in its size, in its funding, in its ability to reach anyone, anywhere. without challenge. We are Rome. Our judgment is now. For that is what Revelation is. A revealing of our judgment. A revealing of the Christ. A revealing of the end. So, son, several years from now, the end result of all this, after the Antichrist has subjugated the entire world, after the mark is distributed, all will be called to a great battlefield. Called Armageddon. We've all heard of it. And after the Antichrist has asked you for your worship, asked you to give him the one last thing you have, your soul, he will then array you for the battle, the final battle. For in his arrogance, his evil, his immaturity, his stupidity, just like his father, the imp, the Antichrist will think he's God, expect you to worship him as God, and think he has a chance against God. Bloody laughable. But this is the imp and his dog we're talking about. At that moment, the Christ will return and destroy all that dare come against him and the Father on the battlefield. And it is described as blood, horse bridle high. And I believe an angel tells the Christ to thrust in his sickle and reap. For only he is worthy. God the Father and Jesus Christ who returns to this realm. At that moment, at the end, there is a description of the people of God that are left on this planet are called up to join him in the sky. Perhaps those in the heavens too, I can't remember. But that is not the rapture, that is the end. Christ destroys, I assume, what would be millions upon a battle, the greatest battlefield, the greatest number ever assembled. And we all know how every story of Donnie's boasts of it being the biggest or the greatest or the largest or the first time. So the greatest battle that ever was, Armageddon, ended by Jesus Christ in the snap of a finger. There is talk of the devil being allowed out once he is captured for a short time. I hope that is very fucking short, sir. The devil, the Antichrist, the false prophet, who I'm guessing, son, are Donnie and Leon, or Donnie and Stephen Miller, or maybe they're both false prophets. But Donnie doesn't keep anyone long. All go in the lake. One of them is given a bit more time. Why, I have no bloody idea, son, why that would take place. But I believe it is Christ himself, maybe assisted by Michael the angel, that throws these things in the lake. I believe I've seen the imp going in, son. Very violent. Violence we can't imagine. On a scale we can't imagine. But I got a picture of it. And it's inevitable, son. After the minions of the Antichrist are destroyed, God the Father, Christ allegedly come down here, new heaven and new earth. After the imp is allowed out for a moment again, I don't know why. And the reaping, the result of the reaping, son, unfortunately, for some, is the lake, along with the Antichrist and the false prophet. Those of God, well, of course, they would live forever. That is the promise. And son, it appears, in the beginning to the middle of the story at present, if not further than that. The reign is only supposed to be 42 months. Now the trick's on knowing when that count begins. "42 months is not that long of a time. But again, when do we start the count? The Antichrist is an old man, in poor health. How much longer naturally could he have? 10 years at the most. But son, again, for some reason, the feeling I get is urgency. I don't feel like we have that kind of time. And I feel like the count should have already begun. The countdown from 42 months. But I am not God. And the countdown could start 5 years from now, for all I know. It doesn't appear Donnie really has 5 more good years, but I guess that's what AI is for. AI Donnie. Image of the Reich, son, forever. That is the plan. So, son, since I must say again, if this much of the story has come just bloody obviously true, doesn't that mean the rest will as well? I could only go by that logic. I can only, as the story presents itself in front of me, I can only go with the flow of it. And the flow of it matches precisely Revelation and the various prophecies for end times. Again, only now that were possible. So I would take it quite seriously, son. I would make sure. Forget this paradigm. These are all the facts that matter. There is a Jesus Christ. There is an Antichrist. You are in his time. Any love in your heart for the Antichrist or his concepts or agendas, you need to remove that, son. For time is short, and it will be held against you. Anything that leads you down the path of taking the mark, you must remove that from your heart. Again, forget political parties. Forget this present football game you view politics as. There is, again, this one simple reality. You are in the time of the Antichrist. If your name is on the Antichrist, you must take it off. And it must be sincere, son, in the heart. It is imperative. I don't care whether I know you, don't know you, never will know you. I don't care who you are. It makes absolutely no difference in my life, or in my eternity, or lack thereof. If any of Donnie is in your heart, the Antichrist, you must walk the other way, remove that from your heart. You are following something that is evil again. Forget Republican, Democrat, Independent, Communist, Socialist. Meaningless! The football game. Meaningless. You have your name on the ultimate evil. That is what I am here to tell you. You have a very short time to remove it. I suggest you do. It's the only fact that matters. Nothing else. Not the lens you see it through. The political lens, the moral lens, whatever, however you justify the evil within you and your Antichrist. You must get rid of it. Purge it. Ask for forgiveness. Come into the fold. It is your only choice. Lest you like plagues, lest you like the lake, lest you like evil. Do you hear me, son? For the rest of you, you have my pity for what you will face via the Reich and the Antichrist, via the imp. For you will be revealed, as will I, as one of God's. If you hold firm and do not take the mark, of course. It may cost you everything. You have my pity, those being persecuted now by the Antichrist, thrown in concentration camps, kidnapped, etc., murdered on the high seas. You have my sympathy, my prayers, my thoughts. I am with you. I think of you every day. And the future. Again, those of you who won't take the mark. I know what you will face. So you as well have my empathy, my prayers, my thoughts. For I doubt many of you knew exactly where this was going, but I always did. If it ever reared its head. And for the past 10 years, it's reared its head. So those of you who do not take the mark, I commend you. You will be rewarded by God. I know that is hard to understand. It's hard for me to understand and accept. And again, you have my prayers, my thoughts. It will not be easy. But there will be rest and eternity at the end. For the rest of you who will go along, and I assume that will be quite a large number. For humans are quite good at going along, no matter what is asked of them. I am horrified at what you will face. I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas. And son, you sleep well. I hope the story, the true Christmas story that you're living in right now, the very end, I hope it didn't unsettle your stomach and that you're able to sleep. Or son, I'm guessing you're not, in God's eyes, at the age of accountability. So you have that going for you. I don't know how that will work. You know what? Let me not even talk about it. I think I've done enough damage. So sleep well, son. Daddy loves you. And again, for those of you who will stand with God and not take the Antichrist and the imp's mark, I commend you. You will be immortal forever, and you will have rest, and you will have forgiveness, and God knows what else. Have a wonderful Christmas. God bless, and good evening.